Well, hello and welcome to Friday, everybody. We are so happy you're all here. John's not going to be able to be with us today, so you get me. Sorry about that. Today, we have a wonderful artist from Washington State, USA, Sandy Allnock. You might know her from YouTube. She's an amazing teacher, wonderful artist, and we're excited that she came to join us today. So thank you, Sandy.
I'm so excited to be here. It's my first time. I'm very excited to be a first time guest. Long time caller.
Wonderful. Love it. Awesome. So today we're going to start with a slideshow of Sandy's work. And Sandy, if you want to just explain the pieces as we go through the slideshow and talk a little bit about them, that would be great.
Okay.
All right, so we're now sharing a slideshow for Sandy. We love doing this each time we have a guest artist, Sandy, because we love our friends to connect with our artists. And just in case you haven't followed you, I think many of them already do. Okay, so just in case you are not friends or contact with Sandy, this is her Instagram handle. Easy to locate. It's her name, Sandy Alna. And of course, she's also on Facebook. It's the same handle, her name with a dot in the middle. And these are the artworks that we're going to share. We're going to hear a line or two from Sandy. We begin with this piece, Sandy.
This was gouache painting. I was trying to do some test painting so I could post some things on my website to get people to have me do some commissions. And this was just a floppy eared dog that I absolutely loved. He's so cute in
So cute.
Daniel Smith gouache. This one was a watercolor painting that came really quickly, and it was an experiment for me in using the white of the paper and really making sure I reserved it with this huge splash of water. And my little duckling, such a sweet little bird, again looking at ways to render the light and the dark, the highlights and shadows with a range in between, and creating the feeling of water and that reflection in contrast to the really soft fur and the leaves and rocks behind the little bird. A lot of fun to paint.
You really captured the light.
And then this was, nope, this was an eyeball of a horse. And I was just experimenting. I'm not somebody who tends to throw in wild colors. And I just wanted to see what would happen if I decided I wasn't me anymore. And I wanted to try to paint something with a little blue in the fur of the horse. Is it fur that horses have? Hair. I think they have hair. But yeah, just playing with different colors in my sketchbook. And oh, my pumpkins. This one's on YouTube if you want to see how to do it. I was layering the warm colors and then throwing the cooler colors on top to create all of the differences in value across the entire group of pumpkins. And the whole time I was painting, I was pretty sure it was going to be a hot mess. And then at the end, I stepped back from it for a minute. And this is a thing you need to always do: walk out of the room and come back and pretend someone else painted it. And then you're like, oh my goodness, what just happened? And then put it on YouTube. So, yes, even we can be surprised by our own work. And then more in gouache. These are some cherries. And this was right when I was learning gouache. And one of the things that we talked about earlier before this call even started with some of the people that were here was how, if you can draw, then you can paint with anything, you can paint with any medium, as long as you know how to draw first. I knew how to get these highlights if I were using other mediums, and I was practicing how I can do that in gouache paints. And it's a challenge simply because the gouache lifts, but enough pursuing it and really working at it, you can actually make it happen.
And that's the last piece on this slideshow.
Okay. Well, thank you. John
Hey,
is
John.
here. I was
Good
told
to
you
have
weren't
you.
coming today.
No, I've had problems with my Comcast. Oh, I shouldn't say their name, but I've had issues. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, my friend. It's been a long
It's been a
time.
while. It's been a while. Yes.
I've seen you since I think NAMTA in April.
Yeah, that's right. Me, you, and Ashley and Catherine.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk
Great
about your
times.
process you were playing with. I'd like to see what you've come up with that the oxidation process you were using.
Yeah, I haven't actually solved all of that yet, but eventually I will.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good to see you.
Good to see you. So are we ready to
Yeah, sure.
start
Yes.
then? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that grab some stuff here. I wanted to just show you a couple of watercolors that have the reservation of whites in them. And I'm not going to go through all of these. I mentioned earlier that I do love using watercolor in a way that I save all the whites. I use as little gouache or masking fluid as possible. I actually hate masking fluid myself, and painting around things, planning where my whites are is a big part of my process. And we'll talk about that as I do the painting today. Here's another one with some wintry ice and playing with the value of one branch being the same as the value of another branch, but when it's against a lighter sky or a darker landmass, it's going to look different. And then the whites are what saves and separates the branches and the snow from the backgrounds behind them. And how do we do that? This little painting is one that I did last year. I was just trying to see if I could paint this many flowers without any gouache, and I did. Just going around the shapes and not drawing them, but just doing it without a pencil line, for me, tends to work better, and I'll be explaining that. And then two more quick ones. This one is one that my girlfriend came over to my studio yesterday and she about flipped out about this one. I'm not sure what I think about it. Maybe you guys can let me know in the chat. But she just thought this was magical. I was playing with, again, the push and pull of dark and light to make this tree look like it's glowing in the sunlight. And on the Zoom call or on YouTube on the replay, it may not look quite right, but to me, here in my studio, I can see a yellow glow because I painted a yellow glow first in the places where the sun was shining, and then painted all of the tree, and then the background came up behind it to really push the tree forward and the background to the back. But this little bit down here is my one part that I was not happy with, but she loved it and told me to ignore it. So I will listen to her and think that it's a beautiful painting.
It is beautiful.
And then this is one that I was just talking with the group about earlier too. Another bit of saving the whites. And I'm working on, this is going to be one of the lessons in a new class that's going to come out on Christmas Day. If you're interested in landscapes that are snowy, because I've done a bunch of different types of landscape classes. And in this one, I'm just excited to teach people this and see what your paintings come out like, because we go through the painting of the sky, the first light wash on the snow, and then how to simplify a lot of the weeds that are in the photograph, the original reference. So this is the kind of thing that I love. I play with light a lot, as you saw in a lot of my work. And that's what we're going to do today. The painting is going to be this photograph. And if you want to see it a little bit better than here on Zoom, there's a link that I put in the chat at one point. Maybe somebody can bump that up.
We'll pop it back in the chat.
Okay, great. So on this one, I want to make sure that I save all this wonderful white on top, of course, for the snow, all of the white shapes that are in here. And the secret to trying to save those is to think of them as shapes and not as the car door or, the whatever that panel's called. Like, you don't have to think about them as those, think about them as the shapes that they are. And that's the process that goes through my brain when I'm doing the painting. So that is what we're going to be doing. I'll be using, of course, the only paints I ever use, my Daniel Smith watercolors. And I'll tell you what those are as I get using them. This palette is the one that I learned from Tom Schaller. Tom Schaller had one, and I was like, I have to have that palette. It's a House of Hoffman, and you can actually put your signature on it, like really fancy. Anyway, save up, sell a kidney, whatever you need to do to get a good palette, because it's really helpful. Brushes I will be using, at least I have out for today. I have this one for the background wash. Instead of doing the whole buildings, I will probably only have time to do a sky. So we'll probably simplify that. This is my new favorite brush. It's a Joseph Z Escoda Aquario, and it's a number 16, and they call it a mop brush. So that is one of my new favorite brushes. This is a Da Vinci Maestro Kolinsky number 4. And my other favorite to play with, if we get to the trees, I'll be using this, a Da Vinci Maestro needle brush. Love this guy. It's so much fun to do trees because it gets me wonderfully out of control. So I'm going to start the painting with some, I'm going to mix a grayish blue color, starting with French ultramarine blue. And I'm going to throw in a bit of transparent red oxide and mix it until I'm happy with what that color ends up looking like. I want it more blue than brown, but if you want a warmer brown, you just mix in more of the brown color. And I'm going to start looking for shapes that are really distinct, like the windshield. The windshield, I can just paint some gray into it. I'm looking for things that are a shape that I can paint without outlines around them. My sketch does not have all the whites outlined. It's one of the things that I learned early on is that I kind of have to make myself not outline the whites. Because if you outline the whites, then you don't get the watercolor division between the whites and the values. And getting that magical sharp line between them, if I do put a line in there at all, like there's a little halo of a line here with just a couple of marks so that I remember to put the snow up there, but I don't outline everything because then I'll just have pencil lines trapped all over. I'm going to look for shapes in this window, and I'm using a very wet paint for right now. For the most part, I am chicken when I paint, and I often think about what can I recover if I screw it up? And I find that if I have a very light wash, and this will dry very light, as much as there's a whole lot of moisture there. It's I'm sorry, did I miss something? Was that for me?
No, it's open mic.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. And if it's urgent to talk about right at that moment, then any of the moderators can feel free to interrupt me because I am happy to answer as I go along because I know it's hard sometimes to remember questions later. So I'm going to use this light wash for the whole first pass. And, it's the way I approach snow a lot, especially because when it dries really light, or if I'm worried that it's going to dry too dark, it's very easy to lift when the paint is really wet. So this is like super like drippy wet in here. And if the paint is already mostly dry on the paper, you won't have much time to do any fixes on it. Side panel. Now there's a bit of teal in here. And on my practice painting, I opted not to put in any of the teal, but I think I'm going to try it. I have just a little bit of ultramarine turquoise that I'm going to drop in just to see what happens. Give me a few spots of that. And my one problem is I've never figured out how to mix enough paint for everything I want to do in a painting. All these years, I am always remixing everything. Now, when it comes to something like the darks of the tires, I'm going to paint right through the dark areas, even though I'm using this really pale color, because I'm always going to be able to add more to it to darken it. But this is going to join the lights and the darks together by just having one wash that basically covers the entire thing. There's some paintings where you have to really think a lot about how the background joins to the foreground, that sort of thing. And when I did a practice painting, which I'll show you at the end of this one, I was thinking a little bit more about the whole background because I was going to include it on that one. Here, since I'm not really planning on doing that for the sake of time, I'm giving myself permission to just play with the car, but I'm looking for where my edges are, where the leading edges are wet versus dry, because I want to make sure that if there's any edge that needs to be joined before it turns into a weird broken edge, like it starts to dry and give you something you can't recover from. I want to have the ability to just keep those edges moving. Fortunately, this car has a lot of stopping points. So I can
Sandy,
just keep.
can you clarify whether it's cold or hot press paper?
This is cold press.
Okay, thank you.
I don't use hot press much, if at all, simply because I like the way that I get broken edges a lot better on cold press or on rough. So those make me very happy to get my edges.
Sandy, there's a comment. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's not scrolling
There's
down.
a comment about from Ginny. She said, I adore how you talk us through this. You are so marvelous at that. And I failed to mention in the beginning that Sandy teaches online classes. And so I'll pop her website in the chat. And today happens to be Black Friday. So if you're interested in learning more from Sandy, you can check that out.
Well, thank you for that. So the new color I mixed up, you can see, is more gray. And even though, I could panic and say, oh my goodness, it's not the bluish gray color, that's all going to be underneath the car and it's going to get dark anyway. So I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to keep painting. And I'm looking here for areas where this black strip is going to connect to another strip. It's going to get darker eventually, but I want to make sure that I touch those edges where that portion of the metal touches something else, because then I don't end up with a hard edge in between them. And you'll see when we get to the second pass on this, why that's important, because when you're trying to make two edges butt up next to each other because they're different colors or whatever, you can end up with a hard line. And I have just a thing, I hate that hard line that you get on a kissed edge like that, because you're trying to make two things work together. So what I love to do is connect all the shapes all over so that then I can add my dark shapes in without getting that extra edge. So even on a place like right here, there's a shadow on this piece of the metal, and then there's also the shadow inside here. But I'm going to be able to put that dark shadow in there and leave that lighter edge outside of it because I just went through the whole thing. And that might become clearer when I get to that part of the painting. But I'm looking for any kind of edges that have to touch each other. And any of those places where I'm going to have that kissed edge, I want to make it go away so that I don't have to fight that. And I will apologize now because my dog just made a noise as though there is a squirrel somewhere in the universe that she might start barking at any given moment. And we will hope that that does not happen here. Getting to there's the undercarriage of the car. There was something that I discovered recently. I haven't been a car painter. Even when I do urban sketching, I have avoided cars. My urban sketches ended up without people because people are hard and cars are hard. So I had all of these sketches that I realized a few months ago when I was creating a class for urban sketchers. I realized that mine all looked like apocalyptic sketches because they had no people and no cars, no signs of life. It was just buildings and that sort of thing. I had not remembered all my lessons from Tom and Alvaro and all these amazing teachers who tried to get me to do the people and the cars. So I was really studying cars and I realized the thing that makes a car look like a car is when you get this shadow underneath of the car. There's a gap in here where you can see through to the other side on most, well, I guess not every view, but on a lot of views. And if you get that in there and you can see through the back of that, people can recognize it so much better as a car. It's amazing. So that is not relevant necessarily to this painting. It's just relevant to my observation of painting cars. Let's see, there is a bit more in here. I'm going to use just some water with my dirty brush to put some of this lighter value in here, just to make sure that some of these parts end up lighter. But we're getting into where some of the edges of the snow are. So I'm going to create kind of a scrubby line in there so that it starts developing the snow. And then in here, this is all a very bright silver. So I'm going to use, again, the water in my brush to just create those shapes around here. And there's a white, fortunately, a nice white line that I can add in this section. And I'm going to soften it with my brush getting even drier. And I'll push the color into that corner so that I get that transition from light all the way to dark. And just because that's an area I'm a little worried about that drying with a hard edge, I'm going to zap it. Just to be sure that I don't get like a really weird dark edge up in that top corner. Now I need to remix again because I do not have enough of the same color with the French ultramarine and transparent red oxide. You could also use ultramarine with a burnt sienna. A lot of people do that. My friend Lisa, who I think is here in chat, she turned me on to transparent red oxide. It just has a bit fresher kind of color to it. I like it better. So I've switched from burnt sienna, which was in my palette for a long time, and transform that into my transparent red oxide.
One of my favorite gray mixes as well. And I love that transparent red oxide has like that chunkier granulation pattern, if you will.
Oh,
I like the door of the car. I'm seeing like this separation and granulation that's really pretty.
Yeah, these two colors together both have a granulation that works nicely as a pair. And I've tried other colors as my mix for grays and that sort of thing, and it just does not do what these two are able to. Now, some of this is not going to match the photo exactly. I'm not trying to be literal to the photograph when I create, especially these little things in the highlights of the headlights. Nobody's going to care about that. It's not going to make the difference in whether or not this is a painting of a car. So a lot of it is, you know, if I find that leaving a little white mark there might work better for me, I'll do that instead, even if the photograph doesn't tell me that I should do that. Because a lot of what makes those fresh whites really fresh and white is what they're next to, and trying to get that contrast between those whites and whatever's around them. I want to add in here, and I think I'm safe to do it at this point. Take a little color out of this first. I've got a lot of moisture here, and I'm looking for places where it might cause me trouble if I put a shadow across the bottom of this section. This is going to be pretty dry by now. It's getting a little bit wetter. And here I might end up with a mess, but I'm not going to worry about it because we got to finish the car today. So I'm using mostly just a brush with water in it.
How much do you think you'll be able to save using?
But the fact that I painted this earlier and it basically dried to the paper, I'm going to get that hard edge between them without a lot of stressing out over it. But I still didn't have to wait for it to completely dry. And I am getting some softness in between there, which I kind of like. So it's impossible to teach anybody. One of the things I wish I could figure out a way to teach is how you like how much water should be on anything, how moist should it be. And when I do go to workshops, which I don't get to go anymore because Daniel Smith does not have my favorite place to learn anymore in the store. The thing I used to go to workshops for was to watch someone paint, and I would kind of sit at an angle so that I could see how much water was still on the paper and like how puddly was it when they started doing a certain kind of move, because like that's the only way I could figure out how I as an artist too could discover when it at what point is it that I should put a particular thing in. And for you it's going to be the same thing. You have to learn for yourself what works for you. But I want to have some places where colors merge together and others where they separate. And a lot of it depends on how dry the area is before I start putting in the next layer. So here I got some mixing around here because these were somewhat wet, but not terribly wet. And I'm going to leave just a little highlight of white at the bottom of this, not because I need it there, but because it's just a little fun thing to add. Now this is still very, very puddly on this side, and I'm just going to let it sit there and dry because I have other things I can work on in the snow. That's going to mean more water in my mix. And this snow up here is darker than this snow down here. And looking at the value, if you pull that photo up, you'll be able to see there's a difference in value in there. And even though we think of snow as white, snow is not all white. You can paint it with all different kinds of colors depending on what's around it too. Because if you have, you know, a sunset on it, your snow might actually be pink. And here I'm gonna suck up some of the, look how beautifully that brush just sucks up extra moisture. It is just a great brush. Discovered this when I was at the Da Vinci booth at NAMTA. And I was asking them questions about another brush that I have, and they couldn't answer the questions because they didn't know they sold that brush, which was a little bit amusing. But they had me try out all their brushes that they had on the demo table, and I was like, "Ooh, that one's nice." And the one they had was not a number 16, but I decided to be bold and try a number 16 because I've never had one this big. Actually, I have like number 20, but it's not as big as my 16 in a different brand. So if you ever go to a place that allows you to test out brushes, my secret to helping you get to be the one that gets to test them, and Catherine and John can attest to this. I went in and I bought like a ridiculous number of brushes at one point, and I bought like one brush that was a $300 brush. And after that, they let me test out any brush I wanted that was in the rack. So go buy one really, really, really good brush from your local store, along with your Daniel Smith paints. And then they will trust you that you actually are a customer. You're not just wanting some strange person wanting to walk in and try out all their brushes and ruin them. I don't even know if people have brushes out there that you can test, but they had a lovely Buddha board out, and I would just go in and play with all the brushes. And that's what I did to find this guy when I was at a show. So lovely one. And it's also in my gift guide. If you're looking for a link to it, I put a link to that in this year's gift guide over at the same site that has been put in the chat, Art-Classes. There's a gift guide link in the menu. If you want to know where my stuff is that I get, I put it all in there. All right, so this is just making some scrubby shadows in the snow here and there because I want this white to feel different than this. This is metal, and it's going to be about the same color because I need to put a little bit more in there. It's not entirely white, but this is going to have to be more on the scrubby side because it is snow. So for this part of the car, which may have looked originally as though it was going to be white, is actually a very pale grayish color. And I can paint right over it so that I don't have that kissed edge. Remember I talked about the kissed edge? If I did not go all the way in here, then I would have a little line where the two of those crisscrossed. I don't mind if my brush kind of continues down in here because that's all going to get dark. But this line would really bother me if I ended up with it and was not able to paint right through it. So I'm going to soak up a little bit of some of this using a baby wipe. I'm a big baby wipe user when it comes to watercoloring because it gives me a softer edge when it lifts than does a really hard dry paper towel. But I'm going to dry it now. So I see a comment from Molly that you bought a lot of brushes there too at that station. I really think every art store should have that station. And then I see questions about the baby wipes. I use the ones from Costco. they're super cheapies. They're not scented, and I have not found that they have any real effect on anything other than they're a moist something. They're moist, so they lift things, and yet they don't lift them so much that that it causes any troubles. And I haven't found any effects on light fastness, although I have not done any tests. I don't have all the equipment that Daniel Smith does. Maybe John has input on if they've ever tried that.
Never tried it.
Never tried it, did you say?
No, never tried it.
Yeah. Well, I tell enough people to use baby wipes, so I hope I'm right. Would not want to be wrong on that one. So I'm going to get rid of some of these outer lines. And this is just with a kneaded eraser. But there are some lines I drew a little heavier than I ought. So this is a plastic eraser that will help really get rid of that. And there's going to be a few more details that I'll use those lines for. What time is it? 11:07. I think I could do the background really quick. I'm not going to do the whole scene just for the sake of time. So I'm going to mix a brighter blue that has some of that same colors that I've had before, but I'm going to add verditer to it. But I want it to not be pure verditer. Verditer can be really, really strong and powerful. I want it to be like a sunny blue instead of the gray sky in the photo. And I'm going to just make the whole background this color. This brush is a Da Vinci Spin, and it's a number 30, I think, is the width on it. Again, bought from John at the station where I tested out brushes. And I can go around now without those lines around it and create that nice crisp line that we see in a painting, and we're like so amazed by it because it's this big, beautiful line that looks effortless. But really, I did all the efforting earlier. And all I have to do is go around
Sandy,
those shapes. Yes.
there's a question from your friend Lisa in the chat. She wants to know, how do you decide when something should be more brown versus more blue?
That is a good question. It's a matter of whether or not it's supposed to be warm or cool, of course. When I do the trees, which, you know, the reason I'm doing this is so it can dry by the time I do the trees, I mix a little bit more of the brown in so that I get more of that natural feel. But on the car, I'm mostly letting it just be a more cool. So I'm going to throw in some more color just for fun. If you have not tried verditer, it is a happy color. Sometimes I've gotten it to do some amazing granulation in skies. And I haven't played with it recently enough to even remember what I did to get it to do that. But it's just kind of a fun, happy blue. And it made it in my palette, I think 2 years ago. And it's just a fun little spark that I add sometimes. Most of my stuff is more natural colors. Some people say, you need more bright colors in your work. And I'm like, go put them in your work if that's what you like. So I'm getting a hard edge in here. So I'm going to just put some water over that to make sure that it does not end up with that hard edge to it. And then a light spritz, just so everything, if it's all around the same wetness, then you don't end up getting a lot of those little bits. So that's why I spray it just a little bit more to give it some extra along the way. Let's see. So now I've mixed a really thick version of the same colors, and I can start putting in some of my really darks into these places that I already talked about, those shadows. So there's a really dark shadow here underneath. I can leave that lip of the metal of the car and give this a nice dark, crisp edge to it. It's always eerie when it gets very silent while an artist is painting. So I'm trying to talk through it.
We're all focusing and enjoying your work. Thank you.
I know. A lot of times on my YouTube videos, I always set them as premieres. If you've never been to a premiere, it's when the artist or whoever's, putting the video out is in chat live talking through things with you. And so I get there and we all start talking before the video starts, and then it starts and then everybody gets quiet and no one will talk anymore because they're all busy watching. And I'm like, I'm here to talk to you all as I'm watching and not painting, so I can actually talk sensibly, which is hard to do when you're actually doing the painting. So I want to get some gradation here in the tire. And I'm using a combination of just plain water and water that's dirtied up. My brush has already gotten some pigment on it. I'm going to let this dry before I go over it again, just so that those lines will stay a little crisper when I add them, because I want to have some definition in there. Not a ton of it, but I want to have some. And watching the timing on it is, again, one of the things that I did a lot when I went to workshops. Not, stressing out about asking a million questions of the artist, but just watching the moisture level, because that's something that's really hard to learn except through practice. Now my puddle has some warmth to it here and some coolness here, but the two puddles are associated with each other, so I can just kind of go back and forth between them to get some of that warmth balancing out the cool.
Sandy, could you please confirm, was that Verdita blue in the sky with a bit of the
Verdita with a little of the palette juice from other things that were left.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. And
I
I've
like
noticed
palette juice.
you just touch things once, Sandy. It's amazing. It doesn't look like you're going back until it's dry at all.
Yeah, I'm trying not to. I have always been the painter who does like death by 1,000 strokes on paintings. Maybe some of you are that way. Like trying to find a way to get the freshest, cleanest strokes without like fussing over them to death. And there are some things that I know I can do that really well on. That's one of the reasons I chose this photograph, because I thought, hey, I think I can get some really clean shapes there. Because, you're doing something public and live, you want to be impressive, right?
I'm impressed.
Sandy, your top cam decided to do a little switcheroo on us and it switched back to vertical.
Oh, what on earth? Okay, turn.
There you go.
There we go.
Perfect.
I did not even touch it. Why did it do that? Gremlins, I tell you, gremlins. Maybe it saw my painting turn and it tried to accommodate that. Maybe there's AI inside my phone making decisions like that.
I have to tell you, Sandy, my husband was in here watching at the very beginning and he just popped back in and he went, whoa, she's already that far. So look at you.
Yowza.
You have about 15 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah, I think we will make it. Which is good. I've been painting for a couple of days, of course, getting ready for this and being all nervous. and excited. My first live call with you guys, and I just couldn't decide what I wanted to paint today. Again, I like I said, you want to be impressive, even though it's not about being impressive. It's not about any of that, but you can't help it. And
You can't help being impressive, Sandy. We're always impressed.
well, I appreciate that. But I was sitting on the sofa last night. The power went out for a while, and I was like, oh no, now I can't go finish painting tonight and decide exactly what is it that I'm going to paint. So after the power finally did come back on, and I was able to make my chicken breasts and stuffing for dinner, I sat on the sofa and I painted this, and I went, that's the one. Like, after days and days and days of trying to decide, all of a sudden, now I figured that's the one. I don't know what made me decide that, other than this has really clean shapes in it. And that was kind of one of the things that I thought might help people who are able to watch this start to learn from. It's a lot harder to make up those white shapes when you don't actually see them in the photograph, because like this one, the reference photo itself has all these really crisp, hard shapes. And like the duck, I had to figure that part out on my own, because that duck was not quite that strong in contrast. And that's what we usually have to do when we're working from whatever reference or real life situation in front of us. We have to start to, in your mind, imagine a bigger contrast. Imagine a spotlight jumping into the middle of the painting and creating some super strong highlights for yourself, because that's what gives your painting a lot of life, when there's a lot of contrast to it. So as I'm adding these really darks in this pass, the whole nature of the painting starts to change, because now we've got these really strong values. And a lot of life, we flatten it out, and we don't amp up that contrast, and it's the amping up of it that makes a huge difference. Now this one is still wet right here, because I really want to get the top end of the car, but the background is wet enough that I don't want to take a chance on having all that bleed out. I did have that happen when I did my sketch of this last night. So I'm going to make sure that that's good and dry so that I don't cause any messes. The watercolor effect still in the darks, yes. A lot of that is because I kept switching between the warm and the cool, and kept switching between thicker and thinner paints. So if you're trying to keep the life in the darks, that's often what's going to help. And while I have the dryer out, I'm going to dry this section, because we'll do trees next, so I can blast through that part, and our little snowy car will be just about done. The sky was supposed to dry itself while I was working on everything else, but it did not go fast enough. And a little trick, if you've ever wondered, like, when is my paper actually dry? If you can run your finger over it, and you can actually see some of the highlight and shadow. If you run your finger over it, you can feel whether or not there's still the warp in the paper. When it's completely dry, it shouldn't have that warp, if you've got it taped down and it's really dry. Sometimes you can even see it happen, that flattening out happen while you're drying it. All right, that's enough for right now. I can go finish the car. soften just one part of it, not all of it, just for the sake of interest. And um, again, when you're trying to create shadows like this and really some sort of really crisp lines, don't get wedded to the photo. Like, look at it for inspiration, but not for, I have to paint this exactly as I see it. I'm looking for shapes that I find interesting and things that just look interesting in the photo. I'm not looking for like, okay, well, I need to have 3 layers of metal around this part or whatever. I'm looking for shapes that help me to define or separate in my brain what some of the shapes look like. So there's probably more here that I'm missing on the car, but I want to get to the trees real quick so you can see my fancy crazy brush because I love that sucker.
Tom on Facebook said the dark underside really anchors the car in place perfectly. And Diane said, reminds me of my grandfather Daniel's car.
Oh, well, this one is supposed to be a Mercedes-Benz, which I have never had or even ridden in one, but it was such a cool angle that it seemed like this would be a fun one to paint. It's also a reminder when you're taking your own reference photos or even when you're setting yourself up, not that you're going to sit on the ground in your driveway to paint your car, but if you are, looking to get some interesting painting out of something, try bringing your camera angle down and look at your subject in a unique way. A lot of times we sit in a chair, we look at everything from the same angle all the time. And it can be a lot easier to get a good painting out of it if you have something really interesting, like the angle of this car is one of the things that makes it really fascinating to paint. All right, I'm going to call that enough for the car because, wait, 1 second. Hold on. I want to have a little bit more in there, just a little bit. I'm a fusser, and that is just what I do. So I will apologize now for my urge to fuss. So now I'm going to do those trees just so we can have a little something in the background of this guy. And I'm going to use some of the trees in the photo as inspiration. So there's just some trees that are different heights and everything here. I'm going to make some that are going to be a little thicker, obviously, because I've got more background to fill in. And this brush, it has this tip on it. And the tip like does crazy things to your tree. So depending on how wet it is and how freshly wet it is, it will do like strange wiggly lines. It will make all sorts of, thick and thin things. Sometimes it's like, I don't like that line. And what I find is that just makes me add more branches to my tree because a tree like this is not going to have everything be perfect. The one thing it is going to have, which is bothering me here, is that your thicker trunks are at the bottom. And if it gets thicker as it gets to the top, it's going to look weird. But as soon as I can put enough down here to make it look like these are thicker bottoms, then that tree trunk is going to look fine. I'm using a mixture of warms and cools to create these. And as my brush is getting used, it almost like it gets used to getting painted with. And it, suddenly feels, oh yeah, I remember how to paint. But the tip on it is just so out of control that it keeps me from doing this thing to try to paint a perfect tree branch, because this thing won't paint a perfect tree branch or a perfect power line or whatever it is that you're trying to paint. And it saves you from making it overly precious. So I can just doodle in lines, and I'm a doodler. Love me some pen and ink doodles. But I can do that with this crazy brush. And it's called, I think officially it's called an inlaid liner. But I just love it. It makes trees a lot more fun and fresh and exciting than I would normally paint on my own. So the other thing I did on this one that I'm assuming you guys probably noticed, but when I showed the painting to a couple of my artist friends, that was one of the first things they noticed was that I changed the license plate, and I will go over those with watercolor because I wasn't going to put some weirdo's license plate in my painting, partially because, even though it's on a public site, this was from Unsplash. I didn't get his permission to use his car's license plate in a painting. And I thought putting watercolor on that would be much more appropriate anyway. So we've got trees in there. And then I'm going to use a little more brown just to change the color slightly for the license plate here. It wasn't big enough to write out the whole word watercolor, but since we often abbreviate it to just WC anyway, then it works, right? Put some of those little things on it and dun 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 dun.
Very nice.
Any other questions that you have for me prior to calling this thing done? As I said, I'm a fusser, so ask questions while I put this little bit of snow in here.
You've done a great job of explaining. It's been great. Sometimes folks will paint at home. Did we have anybody paint along today? If you did, oh, Anna.
Oh, somebody
Anna's
did?
sheepishly
Oh my
raising
gosh,
her
that's
hand.
brave. That's brave. Because this is not necessarily the easiest of paintings to have done.
Sandy, you were describing early on how you wanted to have these lines that would connect or not connect. Could you point an example out now that is finished of where you did that?
Oh, like where the shapes connected?
Well, you were saying you wanted the line to not cut. I couldn't really understand what it was.
Oh, what I was talking about was on places like this. Right in here, we have this darker shadow and then a lighter shadow up on this side. And if I had tried to paint that lighter shadow so it came right up to the edge here, I'd end up with a hard edge between those two shadows.
Got it. Okay.
And this painting doesn't have a lot of that in it, but a lot of paintings do have a lot of that in it. And you end up with those weird hard lines, those like a double edge in between them, because it's almost impossible to make it perfect and not do any overlap. And that's often what I'm trying desperately to avoid.
Sandy, can you show your practice painting that you did?
This one was the earlier one that I did last night sitting on the sofa. So I did include the buildings in it, and I was trying to tone them back because they were just too bright compared to the car itself. So I lifted them while they were still wet and just kind of switched to a more grayed out color. So I have more color in the car this time. This one had much more of the grayness overall. And has just the sky and the trees instead of having the whole buildings. And it's also a different size, so I could get more detail in it, including detail here that I got, I think, a little bit better just in certain portions of the car. But I think both of them were kind of fun.
Great. Yeah.
So
Very nice.
I'm so glad all of you came to visit. I was a little worried with Black Friday that nobody would come because you're all out shopping. But I hear that also shopping is all online this year. That, people are kind of having fun not going out shopping.
There's a lot of participants on today, Sandy. So a lot of people came to see.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad that I could provide an opportunity to not go out and spend all your money.
The day's young. The day's still young. You've got time.
That's
The
true.
day's still young.
That's true. I can't wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow is my favorite day to shop because it's Small Business Saturday. And I look for all the stores that are really small mom and pop shops. And I always go out for lunch out and then I go for pie instead of dinner because,
Good.
because you never get to order the pie because you're always too full from dinner. So I just go out and I have pie for dinner.
I
That's
think that's
awesome.
a very smart decision.
Yeah, that's good.
Great tradition.
There's a comment on Facebook. This is way more interesting than shopping. Thank you, Lou.
Yay. Always happy to be more interesting than shopping. I'm not sure that's the best compliment I've ever gotten, but it's up there. It's definitely up there.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining today. Good to see you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for
See you
coming,
all.
everybody.
Shopping.